Every day for 10 years, I have been bullied and attacked.
Meghan, you're talking bullshit.
And I was the most trolled person in the entire world.
We all know it. You have literally driven people into therapy.
Man, hold on. I'm still here. And so when I think of all of you and what you're experiencing, I think so much of that is
into rehab because of your bullying of them. So zip it.
They thought Australia would save them. They thought if they could just get in front of enough cameras, shake enough hands, and deliver enough carefully rehearsed lines about mental health and online cruelty, the narrative would reset. And for a few days, it almost looked like it might work. But here's the thing about a performance this calculated. Eventually, the mask slips, and when it does, everyone sees it at the same time, because that's exactly what happened. The Australian tour was supposed to be a showcase, a global reminder that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry were still relevant, still respected, still worthy of the platform they abandoned an entire institution to build.
First 2 days of cashing in on We Are Still Royals quickly turns back into the horrors of being a royal. It's a pathetic, broken record of constant victimhood, completely self-absorbed and never a moment of self-reflection. Odious pair.
Instead, it became the event that handed their critics everything they needed. Not because of one catastrophic moment, because of several moments stacked side by side, compared against each other and measured against everything that came before. And at the center of all of it is one sentence, one single statement that detonated across social media within hours and hasn't stopped burning since. Standing in front of students in Australia, Meghan Markle looked into the cameras and declared that she had been bullied and attacked every single day for 10 years, and described herself as the most trolled person in the entire world. Let that land for a second. Not the most trolled person in a difficult situation, not one of the most scrutinized public figures of her generation, the most trolled person in the world. An absolute, unqualified, global superlative delivered from a stage to an audience of young people with the full weight of performance behind it. And the moment that clip left the room, it was over. Because the internet doesn't forget and it doesn't forgive overreach. The clips spread instantly. Commentary channels, news outlets, social media threads, everyone had the same 10 seconds on loop. People weren't just watching it once. They were replaying it, slowing it down, screenshotting the exact expression on her face, and placing it next to every other interview, every other speech, every other carefully constructed moment of performed victimhood she has delivered over the past several years.
Because you're spreading lies. There was not happiness from the Australian public, but of course, when they left the event, Harry and Meghan were all smiles.
Will we get to see you back in Australia soon, Meghan?
oh gosh, I'd love to come back. It's brilliant here.
And that's when the real conversation started. Not the one her team planned, the one nobody could control. Now, her supporters tried to reframe it. They always do. From their side, the statement was an emotional expression of genuine pain, a shorthand summary of years spent under relentless public pressure. And in a vacuum, that framing might have had some traction. Public figures do face online harassment. That's real. But Meghan Markle does not exist in a vacuum, and this statement was not delivered in one. It was delivered by a woman who has spent years monetizing her suffering, packaging her pain into Netflix deals and Spotify contracts, and Oprah interviews and memoir-adjacent tell-alls, and who keeps returning to the same wound every single time the cameras are pointed at her. So when critics heard "most trolled person in the world," the reaction wasn't sympathy. It was a question. Compared to whom? Based on what data? And more importantly, why is this claim being made here, now, in front of students, on a tour that is itself a media operation? Because the second you ask those questions out loud, the emotional framing collapses. What's left isn't a woman sharing her truth. It's a woman making an unverifiable absolute claim about her own victimhood on a global stage while simultaneously running a media tour designed to maximize her global profile. You cannot be the world's biggest victim and the world's most strategic self-promoter at the same time. She keeps trying to be both. The audience has noticed. And the Australian tour was not just that one moment. That's what made this particular stretch of footage so damaging. Because across multiple appearances, across multiple stages, the same themes kept returning. Mental health, online cruelty, the emotional cost of public life, the weight of scrutiny. Harry stood beside her and added his own layer, reflecting on feeling lost, on the trauma of growing up under a spotlight, on Diana's shadow shaping every decision he's made since. These are not new talking points. These are the same talking points, the same emotional architecture, rebuilt and redeployed on a new continent in front of a new audience for what is now a very familiar purpose. And here is where the tour stopped being a PR operation and started being a document. Because when you speak about the unbearable cruelty of public attention from a stage you flew across the world to stand on, when you describe yourself as the world's greatest victim while your team coordinates press access and manages camera angles and times your walkabout appearances for maximum online circulation, the contradiction becomes visible. Not to everyone, but to enough people. And once enough people see it, the clip doesn't need commentary. It indicts itself. This is what the Australian tour actually produced. Not goodwill, not a reset, not a rehabilitated image. It produced 10 seconds of Meghan Markle claiming the world's top victimhood title, 30 seconds of Harry invoking his dead mother to explain his life choices, and an avalanche of people asking the same question we have been asking for years. At what point does the performance end and the accountability begin? We already know the answer. They are never accountable. Because in their version of events, nothing is ever their fault. Every consequence is an attack. Every critic is a bully. And every stage, no matter how carefully they built it themselves, is a cross they are being forced to carry. That is the lie at the center of everything. And Australia just told it louder than ever. Because when you lay the full timeline flat and actually look at it, what you find is not a couple struggling under the weight of public life. What you find is a repeating architecture. The same themes, the same language, the same emotional beats, deployed across different stages, different countries, different formats, but always pointing in the same direction. Always casting the same two people as the wounded. Always positioning the same institutions as the threat. That is not vulnerability. That is a script. The most trolled person in the world line did not appear out of nowhere. It appeared after years of carefully constructed groundwork, years of interviews where the suffering was introduced gradually, where the language of mental health and media pressure was seeded into public consciousness. Not because Meghan was trying to heal, but because she was trying to build a case. And by the time Australia arrived, the case was ready to be delivered at full volume. The fragments you see circulating now are not accidents of the media cycle. They are the intended product. Look at how precisely the talking points travel. The moment a new interview drops, within hours, the same 3 or 4 themes are already in headlines. Isolation, harassment, sacrifice, the courage it took to speak. These are not spontaneous emotional outpourings. These are coordinated releases, timed and shaped for maximum spread. And the fragmentation that follows, that serves them too. Because a fragment cannot be fact-checked the way a full appearance can. A clip cannot be cross-referenced the way a complete record can. The shorter the version that spreads, the more powerful the victim image becomes. That is the machine. And Harry is not a passive passenger in it. His repeated invocations of Diana are not grief laid bare. They are leverage. You do not reference your dead mother in every third interview because you are still processing loss. You do it because you know it is the one card no one will challenge publicly, the one name that shuts down scrutiny before it starts. Harry knows exactly what he is doing when he places Diana into a conversation about media pressure. He is drawing a direct line between his mother's death and his own current complaints, daring anyone to argue with it. That is not honesty. That is emotional hostage-taking. And the pattern accelerates. What started as carefully spaced revelations in sympathetic interview settings has become a relentless content stream. Every appearance feeds the next. Every speech becomes a clip. Every clip becomes a debate. Every debate keeps their names in circulation for another news cycle. We are not witnessing two people trying to live quietly on their own terms. We are watching a media operation that depends entirely on a single product. The story of Meghan and Harry as the most persecuted people on Earth. Without that story, there is nothing. There is no brand. There is no Netflix deal. There is no speaking circuit. There is no reason for anyone to keep watching. That is the most important thing you need to understand about why this never stops, because it cannot stop. The moment the victimhood narrative ends, the commercial proposition ends with it. Every new wave of public sympathy is not just emotional validation. It is revenue. It is market positioning. It is the continued justification for deals that should never have been signed and platforms that are already questioning whether the investment was worth it. The suffering has a price tag, and that price tag has to be earned, cycle after cycle, appearance after appearance, fragment after fragment. So when the Australian clips resurface, and they will keep resurfacing, understand what you are actually watching. You are not watching the latest chapter of a tragedy. You are watching a catalog being restocked. You are watching the same product relaunched in a new package, aimed at an audience that has not yet seen the previous version. The people who have been watching from the beginning already know. We have seen this before. We have seen it in the Oprah interview, in the Netflix series, in the spare pages, in every carefully managed appearance where the tears arrived exactly on schedule and the accusations landed exactly where they needed to. The pattern does not lie, and the pattern has never been clearer than it is right now. Because what Australia exposed was not a moment of emotional honesty from two people under pressure. What it exposed was the seam, the place where the construction becomes visible, where the language gets too polished, the themes too familiar, the timing too precise to be anything other than what it is. A performance, calculated, repeating, and running out of audience. And here is what you need to understand about a performance that keeps running even after the audience has left the building. The narrative did not end in Australia. It did not end with the tour, the speeches, the carefully engineered emotional moments captured for maximum circulation. It migrated, it shape-shifted, it was fed into every subsequent interview, every resurfaced clip, every new appearance, and it kept spreading because the machine behind it never stopped running. That is not the behavior of two people processing pain in public. That is the behavior of two people who have turned pain into a product line. Look at what actually happened to the phrases that came out of that tour. Meghan's claim about being the most trolled person in the world did not stay attached to the speech it came from. It was detached, amplified, recirculated. And every time it reappeared, it did exactly what it was designed to do. It made her the center, the supreme victim, the woman whose suffering was measurable, quantifiable, larger than anyone else's. And the moment anyone pushed back on that claim, the moment anyone noted that other public figures, survivors, activists, people facing genuine persecution, might have something to say about that ranking, the pushback itself became the evidence of targeting. That is a closed loop, a trap designed to be inescapable, and Meghan built it herself. Harry was doing the same thing on a parallel track, and the audience has been watching him do it for years. The grief over Diana, the emotional damage of royal life, the feeling of disconnection and lost purpose, these are real themes he has returned to again and again. But at some point, you have to ask the question this audience already knows the answer to. When does processing become programming? When does genuine pain get converted into a narrative asset to be deployed at will, timed for maximum impact, calibrated to whatever interview or appearance happens to need emotional ballast that week? Because that is what we are watching. Not a man working through loss. A man who learned that loss is currency and has been spending it ever since. And what makes this particular chapter so damning is the timeline. Place Harry's statements side by side across years of appearances, and what you see is not evolution. It is not healing. It is refinement. The language gets tighter. The themes stay identical. Mental health, public pressure, media scrutiny, identity, belonging. The same handful of wounds, reopened on schedule, dressed in whatever framing the current platform requires. Reflective for formal events, personal and raw for sit-down interviews, broad and socially conscious for speeches where the cameras want something quotable, the content is interchangeable, only the packaging changes. And the audience, this audience, has been watching long enough to see the seams. That is the moment the whole construction starts to collapse under its own weight. Because once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. Once you recognize that every new statement is being compared against everything that came before, the performance stops working the way it was designed to. The emotional resonance that was supposed to disarm critical thinking starts triggering it instead. Every new clip becomes a reference point. Every new interview gets measured against the archive. And the archive is not kind to people whose stories keep changing while their themes stay perfectly, suspiciously consistent. This is what happens when a media strategy gets too clever for its own good. The very phrases that were engineered to travel, stripped of context, shared in fragments, optimized for emotional impact, become the evidence against the people who launched them. They circulate, they get compared, they get stacked against each other by an audience that has been paying attention and has receipts. And what that audience sees is not two people telling their truth. What they see is two people telling a story, the same story, over and over, with just enough variation to pretend it is spontaneous. The Australian tour was not the origin of this. It was just the moment it became undeniable to anyone watching closely. By the time those speeches entered the broader media cycle, cut, clipped, repackaged by outlet after outlet, each one adding its own frame, the narrative had already taken on a life completely separate from whatever was actually said. And that separation is not accidental. It was the goal. Get the phrase into circulation. Let interpretation do the rest. Stand back and collect the sympathy. Except the calculation had one fatal flaw. Because media ecosystems do not just amplify, they preserve. Every moment that gets introduced into public discussion stays there. It does not disappear. It becomes part of the permanent record that every future moment gets measured against. And Meghan and Harry, for all their media sophistication, built a record that is now actively working against them. Claim by claim, interview by interview, tour by tour, the archive remembers everything, and it is not finished with them yet. And that archive is precisely what makes the situation irreversible. It is not just that the record exists, it is that the record has been distributed, dissected, and duplicated across every format imaginable. And each format has done its own damage. A headline strips away the performance and leaves only the claim. A clip removes the setup and isolates the moment where the mask slipped. A commentary video layers interpretation on top of interpretation until what remains is not spin. It is verdict. And Meghan and Harry handed the raw material for all of it to the world themselves, willingly, repeatedly, believing each appearance would be the one that finally won the argument. It never was. Because the audience learned to watch differently. What played in full length in a controlled interview setting got immediately broken apart the moment it hit the internet. The pauses, the phrasing, the carefully placed tears, all of it became evidence the moment it left the room. And the fragments that circulated were not random. They were the moments that revealed something. The moments where the careful construction broke down just enough for people to see the calculation underneath. That is why certain phrases from certain tours and certain interviews refuse to die. They are not kept alive by obsession. They are kept alive because they function as proof. They become the shorthand for an entire pattern of behavior, reference points that the audience returns to every time a new claim surfaces, every time a new project launches, every time another attempt at rehabilitation begins. The archive does not just remember. It actively organizes the evidence against them. And the most damning part of all of this is not what their critics have said. It is what Meghan and Harry said themselves. Every overreach, every contradiction, every emotionally engineered statement designed to generate sympathy and silent scrutiny. They built this case word by word, appearance by appearance, and they built it in public for the entire world to keep. If you've been watching this story unfold and you knew from the beginning how it would end, you belong here. Palace Leaks covers what the mainstream press is too polite to say plainly. Subscribe and turn on notifications. Because this story is far from over, and every new chapter proves the point.